There was a moment when fans started to believe Max Verstappen had finally grown past his impulsive youth. The hot-headed teenager who once stormed through the paddock, yelled into his team radio, and raced like there were no rules, seemed to have evolved. With years of dominance and a trophy cabinet full of titles, many thought he had matured. But under the scorching sun of Barcelona, that belief started to melt away. The race peeled back the calm image and showed something raw underneath. An aggressive, impatient Max, possibly more fired up than ever before. And what's surprising is that the team who once gave him everything, Red Bull, might now be part of the problem. The chain of events started when Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes came to a halt due to a technical failure, triggering a late safety car. That moment turned everything upside down. The front-runners rushed into the pits for fresh tires. Verstappen, however, didn't have any soft or medium compounds left. Only the hardest set remained. It was a clear misstep in strategy. Red Bull had boxed themselves into a situation, and Max had to bear the cost. They could have kept him on the track since only a few laps were left and maintaining position was key. Instead, they called him in, fitting the least effective tires at the worst time. The restart proved painful. Verstappen lost control momentarily, got into contact with Charles Leclerc, and fell back to fourth place. As if that wasn't enough, George Russell closed in quickly. In a last-ditch attempt to hold position, Max left the track and returned ahead of Russell. Then came the instruction Max hated hearing. He had to give the place back. We've all heard Verstappen vent on the radio, but this time had a different tone. He wasn't just upset. He was furious. What followed was less about racing and more about making a point. As they approached turn 5, Verstappen slightly lifted off, appearing to obey the order. Russell moved past, but within seconds, Max slammed his foot down again, charging forward and forcing a collision with the Mercedes on the following straight. It wasn't a smart move. It was emotional. One that didn't just raise eyebrows, but split opinions across the entire motorsport world. For someone who has spent the last few seasons dominating every race weekend, this kind of reaction felt like a warning sign. A driver so used to leading comfortably, now visibly rattled and lashing out. And the consequences of that one move? Well, they were felt both on and off the track. 5 laps. That's all it took for Barcelona to flip the season on its head. What started as a routine race may end up becoming a defining chapter in Verstappen's career. In those final laps, we saw two versions of the same man. One showed incredible reflexes, holding on to a wildly unstable car at nearly 190 mph, balancing it like a skater on a frozen lake. The other was a flash of uncontrolled emotion, driven by frustration more than logic. His tangle with Russell wasn't just about position, it felt personal. Even the other drivers sensed it. Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and Oscar Piastri didn't say a word during their cool-down room wait, but their faces told the story. The slight grins, sideways glances, and silent pauses said more than any quote could. This wasn't the calm mindset of a champion in control. It was something else entirely, and for those who followed Max since the beginning, it wasn't unfamiliar. This was the same no-nonsense racer who once claimed he just wanted to drive and stay away from politics. But now, that same driver seems ready to crash through problems, whether it's cars, drivers, or expectations, without blinking. George Russell, caught in the middle of it all, tried to stay composed. But even he couldn't hide his disbelief. His post-race words were carefully chosen, yet you could tell he was confused. Felt a bit unnecessary, he said. And honestly, that was putting it mildly. Verstappen, on the other hand, brushed it off like it was nothing. When asked about the contact, his reply was sharp and dismissive. Does it matter? That kind of response didn't just surprise fans, it stunned people inside the paddock who've seen it all. This wasn't a mistake made in the heat of the moment. It felt like it came from a place of intention. He knew exactly what he was doing. And, yet, the punishment didn't match the act. The stewards gave him a 10-second penalty. That's all. From 5th, he dropped to 10th. For a move that some thought could have taken both drivers out of the race, the penalty felt like a slap on the wrist. Former champion Nico Rosberg didn't hold back. "He just drives into him. That's a black flag," he said bluntly. Rosberg has been in the middle of title fights, faced the pressure, and he knows the difference between aggressive and reckless. What he saw in Barcelona, he didn't call pressure. He called it something worse. Egotistical, dangerous behavior that went unpunished. And that's what has many concerned. A black flag is one of the harshest punishments in Formula One. It's extremely rare. But if Verstappen's shove wasn't enough to bring it out, then what is? If a champion behaves this way and walks away with just a time penalty, what kind of message does that send? The bigger worry isn't just about what happened on track. It's about what keeps happening. This isn't the first time Verstappen's let his emotions take the wheel. In fact, he's just one penalty point away from a race ban. That's 11 points collected over 12 months, each one like a warning light that no one seems willing to switch off. Each of those 11 points tells its own story. Races where emotion overruled caution. Decisions that crossed the line between fearless and reckless. From Austria to Mexico, Brazil to Abu Dhabi, and now Spain, the list is getting longer. The FIA is clearly growing uneasy, but they've yet to act decisively. Verstappen isn't just a hot-headed rookie anymore. He's a multiple-time world champion, expected to lead by example. But lately, the only example he's setting is one of disregard for consequences. And it's not only about his clashes with rivals. The real storm is brewing inside his own camp. Red Bull, once a machine of perfect coordination, is beginning to show cracks. Their car, which once looked unbeatable, is starting to fall behind. McLaren's speed is growing race by race. Their setups look more balanced, their strategies sharper. And Verstappen, he's trying to hold things together, but even his brilliance has limits. He's no longer slicing through the field with ease. He's fighting the car, wrestling it to the finish, doing everything he can just to stay in contention. And that kind of pressure, week after week, builds up. When the strategy team missteps, when the pit wall fumbles a call, all of that frustration spills out, sometimes in ways that can cost him more than a few positions. Barcelona wasn't just about tire choices or poor strategy. It was about how Max responded when things went wrong. His engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, usually a calming voice in his ear, told him to let Russell by. Max didn't just hesitate. He used that moment to send a message. By making contact just after pretending to yield, he showed that he's not just battling on the track, he's pushing back against his own team. That moment between Verstappen and his engineer wasn't just about a single call. It highlighted a growing disconnect. The trust that once defined their relationship is beginning to erode. Red Bull, the team that built its recent dominance around Max's talent, suddenly looks unsure how to manage the very force they helped unleash. For years, they supported his aggression, backed his boldness, and let him race on his own terms. But now, those same qualities are starting to cause trouble. And this isn't just a story about strategy errors or mechanical issues. It's about what happens when a team loses its grip on its lead driver. Max is still their strongest asset, no question. The points are proof of that. 110 over 7 races, even with a car that's no longer the fastest. He's keeping them in the title fight almost single-handedly. But brilliance alone isn't enough when the structure around you begins to falter. Look at the lineup around him. Liam Lawson, who had a short stint as a stand-in, didn't last. Yuki Tsunoda is struggling to find consistency. Red Bull doesn't have another Max Verstappen waiting in the wings. That makes managing him even more complicated. They need him. But how do you rein in a driver who doesn't want to be reined in? And Max himself. He's driving on the edge, both literally and emotionally. His skill behind the wheel is unmatched, but his decisions away from it are raising more questions than answers. Every heated moment, every ignored instruction, every run-in with a rival, it adds to the sense that something is shifting. He's still delivering on Sundays, but the cost is starting to show, not just in results, but in relationships. With engineers, with competitors, even with the governing body. And at some point, all of that tension has to lead somewhere absolutely. Here's the final part, Part 6, of your rewritten and original style script, concluding the story in a strong, storytelling voice, tailored for your video and text-to-speech narration. Part 6. Barcelona might have lasted only a few dozen laps, but what unfolded there could leave ripples for the rest of the season. It wasn't just a test of racecraft. It was a glimpse into a simmering conflict within one of the most successful teams in recent history. The bigger story isn't whether Verstappen is still fast. He is. That's not in doubt. The bigger question is, how long can Red Bull handle the storm brewing from within? Because when a driver starts questioning his team's decisions in public, ignoring instructions on track, and pushing boundaries with rivals, it's not just about performance anymore. It's about control. It's about culture. And the signs are pointing to a slow unraveling of something that once looked unshakable. And then there's the FIA, watching it all play out from their own tightrope. One more penalty point and they'll be forced to take action. Ban him for a race, and they risk upsetting the entire championship. Let him off again, and they invite chaos. Either way, the stakes are high, and growing higher by the week. Max Verstappen has always raced with fire. That's part of what made him great. But now, that same fire threatens to burn more than just rubber. It's starting to scorch everything around him. Teammates, rivals, engineers, even the very team that backed him all the way to the top. So what comes next? Does Red Bull regain control? Does Verstappen adjust course before things get worse? Or are we already watching the early stages of a split that could redefine the team, the driver, and maybe even the sport? For now, all we can do is watch. 1 race at a time. One decision at a time. But make no mistake, the calm is gone. And in its place is a tension you can feel in every corner, every press conference, and every radio message. Max is no longer just racing for wins. He's racing against pressure, expectations, and his own limits. The road ahead? It's anything but quiet.